Good afternoon, everyone. Yeah, as Hayley has rightly said, I'm a senior leader in the Grange School here in the northwest of England. I've been in education now for 28 years, loving every second of it. Absolutely amazing. I was just thinking, just listening to you guys this morning talking about teaching and retention and all of those sorts of things that brought me back to 1998. First started teaching in Middlesbrough. Lovely little school that it was, but it wasn't without its challenges. And my first lesson was the bottom set year 9, and it was absolutely glorious. And I learned a lot in about 15 minutes. This kept me safe and sound for the past 28 years. I've been in quite a few different schools. I started in Middlesbrough. I then moved up to Hartlepool. That was an interesting time of my educational life. I spent 16 absolutely fantastic years up there. It was in a school that the only way I could describe it is it went from the sublime to the ridiculous. It had everything, and it was just amazing to be in. And I went there initially as a normal teacher, then sort of went up through the ranks, eventually got to senior leadership in that school. And then my wife woke up one morning and decided that she wanted to move back to the northwest. So as a good person that I am, I said, okay, let's go and do that. So I then moved across, and interestingly, for 2 years, I spent time in a school in North Wales, in Rhyl. That was unbelievable. I couldn't begin to tell you what that taught me with regards to being a teacher, and also trying to be a leader of students and a leader of staff at a place where it was at its rock bottom. So that was incredible. Interestingly then, I have moved on, and I'm now in possibly one of the top independent schools in the country. Talk about chalk and cheese. But what I've discovered is that the whole process of teaching, the whole process of teachers doing the best that they can remains the same, no matter where you are and no matter the position that you're in. And my passion has always been being able to provide a system within schools for our teachers to be the best that they can be. And it's only really in the past 2 years where I've began, after 28 years of it, I've begun to see that there is actually what I believe to be a fantastic process, opportunity window that we can actually bring into schools, which Iris Connect has amazingly given me the position to be able to do all of that after 28 years. And what I want to do this afternoon is to show you the initial steps that I'm taking, because I'm still on the journey. This isn't a finished piece of work. This is actually a piece of work that's only in its 2nd year. And I think it's probably going to take between 4 and 5 to truly embed. And what I want to try and show you this afternoon is the process. What I've done, how I've done it, and where we are at. And it isn't, as I said, it isn't without its difficulties either. So one of the questions that I have been asked quite often by the staff in our school, and if you think of our school in terms of its context, we are a school that ordinarily, if you talk about exam results, it's one of the best in the country. So our teachers would quite effectively be saying to me, well, why are you asking me to change? We're doing okay, our results are absolutely fabulous, leave me alone. So it's getting that mindset into the school, and it comes back to what was being spoken about this morning with regards to culture, vision, having that ability to be able to produce a pathway within a school where everybody feels involved. And I quite like that painting by Picasso, because he says inspiration exists, but it has to find you working. And I say to our staff that if you really want to improve, you have to look at yourself. You have to be working at it yourself to be able to do that. So I want to start at the end. I want to tell you where I want to be. And I'll talk to you about where we are in the process of all of that. In the next 4 years, I expect to see the Grange School to be a research school that has this sort of collective learning processes involved, where our staff are in a position where they can share their resources, their pedagogy, their thoughts, their ideas about education internally whenever they like. And for the rest of the school body to be able to see that and to respond to it in a platform that is easy for them to be able to do it in. I also want to be creating coaching hubs right across the school, and I'm in the process of making that work. And when I discovered the AI-generated part of Iris Connect, I nearly fell off my seat. When I started digging into it, I couldn't believe what I was getting back from it. And when I introduced it to the staff at the Grange School, they were mesmerized by it. Some of them are clearly, as you can imagine, a little bit reticent, and it's just because they don't understand it yet. And I want to try and build in our school where lesson observations don't exist. Not allowed. Everything comes from within, where we are responsible for ourselves, to have that autonomy, to have that agency, to be able to say to ourselves that I'm valued and I'm confident in the ability to be able to improve. But setting up a platform to be able to do that. And I'm in the process now of building up these things called coaching triads. And I was fascinated listening to the coaching conversation this morning, because by the sounds of things, people are just getting it completely wrong. Coaching is not about giving advice. Coaching is exactly the opposite of that. Coaching is really about letting the other person find the solutions to their own problems and being in a position where you're asking those proper questions to get them to do that. And I think for the past 25 years, teachers have been thinking that they are being coaches, but they're actually being as mentors. And there's a vast difference between those two things. And this is what I want our coaching hubs to be, where our staff, and I'm going to be really probably ambitious here in this next statement. Hayley, I think you mentioned that you wanted maybe like one subject leader. I want every member of staff to be a coach, every last single one of them, because they all need to have this power within themselves to be able to improve. I also want to build this CPD bespoke pathway that Hayley mentioned as well, where our teachers are not driven by something that comes from the top. They are driven by something that comes from within. And as leaders, that we allow them and we give them the space and the freedom to be able to express themselves in their developmental journey, because I believe that's where we're going to get our best out of our teachers. And we build our CPD around that to be able to make that work. And I know it's ambitious, and I know where I'm at the moment, it's easy for me because I'm not in a multi-academy trust. I don't have to feed into other school situations. I've just got the Grange to think about, and I'm fully aware of that, because I was in a multi-academy trust when I was in Hartlepool, so I do understand them. So that's where I want to be, and I'm not there yet. But what I have done so far is to try and convince our staff that I want us to move from this observational approach in school to a school where we talk about transformation. And that will come from them themselves, a school where every teacher drives their personal development. That's who we are. And then we have to bring in our vision, we have to bring in our culture, and we have to try and build in a program to make all of that work. So as I said, I have spent the past 25 years or so doing that, where I would sit in at the back of a lesson and I would be observing lessons, and then I'd be giving feedback. And then the teacher would be listening to it, and I'd be trying my best to make them feel good about themselves, but invariably they're either listening or half listening. And I never really know, not truly, the other part where they adapt and learn, because how often do we go back and we truly check upon it? But if a teacher is taking the lead for themselves and they're actually getting the opportunity to actually look at what they're doing through Iris Connect, that power is incredible to be able to look. Then have them to evaluate it and to adapt and develop. Develop, for me, is really critically important. One thing I want to talk about is one of the things I was acutely aware of When we talk about teachers improving or teachers developing or teachers really beginning to understand where they are in their own environment, I also have to make sure that our students are doing exactly the same. Because we have to have this symbiotic relationship where one understands the other. And what I've been doing for the past, I started with the students, as I always do, and I created a philosophical approach to learning in the school, and I called it Acorns. We all love our acronyms. And within that, I got our students to understand that when they were in any lesson, regardless of what it is, they have to perform to those named things within that acorn. Because our school motto is from acorns, great oaks grow. So I took it from the culture. So our students are in a process where they know that when they're in lessons, they have to show evidence that they are doing these things. Not all of the time, but the data of it is being collected, and I'm doing that through a program called Class Charts, where I'm asking every teacher every single day to provide me with the metrics to be able to see how far down the line are we with maybe our students being receptive to learning, or where they're being analytical enough in the way in which they're approaching their lessons. All of this stuff is being analysed all of the time for one particular and sole reason for me, to improve the way in which our students understand what it is that they need to be focusing on in lessons at a particular point in time. So they are self-evaluating all of the time. They are being reflective all of the time. And I'm not saying we're there with it yet, but I will say that our students have embraced this, and they absolutely love it. And every single week, our form tutors are always displaying the information to them. This information goes to parents. It's in the newsletters. It's absolutely everywhere. I've got it on the walls. It's as part of the fabric and culture of the school. So when I was happy with this, I then moved across to our teachers. I said, okay, now we've got our students, we've got the culture, we've got the behaviour, we've got everything right with our students. Let's now work on ourselves. What can we do, and how can we start thinking about what is it that we can effectively do that is not time intensive, that doesn't impinge on the normal stuff that we do, and we can use a platform to make this safe, confidential, and something that will give you that impetus to try something a little bit different in your teaching. Be excited about your teaching, or even more excited by it. But years have taught me you can't do everything at once. Everything has to start small in little bits at a time. And that's what I did. So to begin with, I split it into these two phases. And in the first phase, I made sure that I had select groups of people within the school who would then become champions of Iris Connect. Then I had the phase two where I rolled it out to the rest of the school. I articulated this to the school and to our staff so they fully understood what it was that we were trying to do. So I presented them with effectively a 2-year model to begin with. So they knew what was coming. It wasn't new to them. They knew that their heads of department were going to be the guinea pigs. They were the ones that were going to champion this, to start this off. So to explain that, and to begin with, I made sure as well that I set up various different teaching and learning groups. I advertised this around the school even before it started. So when I did stand up at the beginning of the year in our first meeting in September, this wasn't new. This was something that was buzzing away in the back of their minds. So that was a good start for me. So the first thing that I did was in the phase one, I made sure that all of our heads of department were trained in Iris Connect, and that's where Iris Connect came in. And the training that they received from these guys was absolutely amazing. We had 2 sessions, and at the end of that second session, every single member of our school who is responsible for their subject were in a position to really focus on Iris Connect, and that's exactly what they did. But one of the things that we made sure of, I found this really critically important. One of the main things that was always coming back to me from our heads of department was, I'm busy. I haven't got the time to set this up. I haven't got the time to do this or the time to do that. And I understand all of that. So we did it for them. So we set a system in place, a planning system in place where it was all set out, and I knew exactly who was doing what and where and when. And I made sure that our IT team were there and they set it up. All the teacher had to do was press a button. That was it. Nothing else. And then afterwards, they can go back into the platform and to look at it and to reflect upon it. The idea was that they did all of this in the spring to summer term. And by doing that, they then had their weekly heads of department meetings with the rest of their colleagues. And part of the agenda for the heads of department was to talk about what it was that they learned from using Iris Connect. And in the summer term, the heads of department then showed the rest of their departments how this works. They disseminated the information. So it wasn't coming from me. It was coming from them. It was coming from the inside out, exactly where I needed and wanted to be. I'm not saying that was perfect, because it wasn't. In fact, there still are maybe some heads of department here sitting on the fence. They're not quite there yet, but there's more to come. And that's where I want to get to with this. Now, sitting alongside this, and this is the important part, was the coaching roadmap. Parallel to this, and at exactly the same time, I advertised in the school. It wasn't just me, it was the COO of the school as well. He was instrumental, actually, in making sure that all of this worked. Where we got together 6 really eager members of staff, and they weren't necessarily heads of department. In fact, most of them weren't. And we trained them to be coaches. We went through that process with them. And we made sure that we wanted to get that right, because coming back to what you guys were saying this morning, if you start off in the wrong place, it's a disaster. So we made sure that they knew what to do and how to do it at the right point, at the right time, and in the right place, coming back to what your code. And we came together, and we couldn't do it without Iris Connect. Wouldn't have worked, because the time-intensive nature of our job, it would have broken apart at one point or at some point, which is what I'm used to working in other schools. So we had the ability now to train our staff, use Iris Connect for them to record one of their lessons, to then get it into their coaching hub, which I had set up within Iris Connect for them, to be able to share the video, being able to ask questions and receive responses to that, and get themselves ready for the triad coaching session that they were going to have. And again, when we talk about sort of being time intensive, this coaching session here was in our CPD day at Easter. So we took them out of part of the day in the afternoon. So it wasn't during the school day. So they had time to really focus on this. And they then went back after that. And I have to say, with regards to all of this, we made sure as well, probably coming back to what you guys are so used to, setting them up using the OSCO model to be able to be in a non-judgmental room, so that when they were asking questions, they were not questions that were based upon sort of opinions or what they thought about what they had seen, but they were questions associated with pure pedagogy. And what it forced the coachee to do was to really reflect on what it was that was being asked of them. And they had to stick to those questions. And those questions were split up between different sections within the lesson. So if the coach said, I want you to concentrate on the beginning of the lesson, then we had a sheet of paper with these questions that were completely associated with the beginning of the lesson. So it took away the judgment. And what it brought in was complete and utter evaluation and reflection. It was difficult to begin with. They found it really tough. And this was just a little snapshot of the 3 coaches there. And that's our COO in the photograph as well. Because we were there to begin with, just to really make sure that it was working. And it did work. It worked brilliantly, in fact. I was amazed by it. So much so at the end of it, when they came back to us with their evaluations, what they told us about how it improved what they did in their lessons was incredible. And then behind all of this, you had a business and economics teacher, you had a graphic design teacher, you had an English teacher. That would never happen ordinarily. And before that point, I would say that the English teacher and the graphics teacher probably hadn't spoken to each other. Not really. Schools are busy places. But they managed to spend quality time and they understood one another. And the amount of information that our English teacher got from the graphics teacher and likewise from the business and economics teacher was just phenomenal. no judgment, no planning, no lesson plans, no evaluation. And at the end of all of this, they just went back and they reflected themselves and they recorded a second lesson. And came back in the summer term, and then they had again the second coaching session to be able to talk around that. And at the end of it, they said that the valuable experience of that for them was just beyond belief. So that took me to this. 2 parts to it. September of this academic year, first day back, I introduced the reflective lesson recording observations in Iris for every member of staff. So they had to use Iris between September to the end of January. And they had that time frame to book it in, get it set up, figure out what lesson they were going to do and what it was that they were going to focus on. And I didn't give them a steer deliberately. I didn't say, I want your lesson to be focused on this. I just wanted them to get used to Iris Connect. I didn't want any more expectations from them. And they did that. And we have 75 teaching staff in the school, and at the moment I've got 72 staff that have already used Iris Connect. The other 3 were off on illness and had an operation, but they will get it done in the spring term. So everybody now has had experience of this. And again, I made sure that everything was planned for them, that they didn't have to ask too many questions. It was all there for them. So I've already set up within Teams at the moment. I'm going to move out of Teams, and I'll tell you why in a few minutes, so that all of this information is for them to be able to do that. So all the helpful guides, the videos, everything that Iris Connect had put in for helpful guides and videos, they were brilliant, worked brilliantly well. And it was the same with the heads of department. All they had to do was book it in. We set up a booking system, and when they got to their lesson, it was there. It was set up. It was ready. All they had to do was push a button. And that made all the difference. And I know it sounds like a small thing, but it's huge, being able to do that for your staff. And that comes back to culture. It comes back to knowing your staff, loving your staff, appreciating your staff, not giving them extra stuff to do. Also them knowing that another person, their line manager or senior leader, will not be coming into their classroom at any point in the year because they are responsible for their own development. And they went back and they started sort of taking a look at their videos, and we had professional conversations about what it was that they learned about this sort of thing. Now, parallel to this again, we had our second phase of the coaching, which we now have 18 members of staff involved in that. How did we get 18? Because our 6 members stood up on the first day back and told them all how brilliant it was. I didn't have to say a thing. It came from them. And all of a sudden, we had 18 more people who were really interested in it. So now I think we've got somebody from every department right across the school who's involved in some shape or fashion with the coaching. And again, we've gone through the first part where we've trained them, we've showed them, we've explained it to them, they're ready. They've already recorded their lesson. And in April, when we come back for our CBD, they're going to sit and they're going to go through their first coaching session, and that's going to be on Iris Connect for them in their hub, in their coaching hub. So that's all there. I always want to say to our staff that you have to make it happen. You have to build your own blocks. You have to try and develop in a way in which suits you best. So I'm at the stage now where I'm asking myself, well, are we hitting our targets? Are we where we need to be? And I think for me, the answer is yes, sort of, because there are still difficulties with it all. So I can safely say that nearly all of our teaching staff have recorded and reflected using Iris Connect. I can't tell you that all of them are positive. Some staff still are not positive about it. They still think it's not for them. And that's okay. But we've still got a path to travel with regards to all of this. But what I'm really pleased about is that the vast majority of staff have came back and they've said, okay, I mightn't have seen a lot, but I've seen enough to try and move me forward. But in amongst all of this, AI decided to enter the stage left. And it absolutely, completely changed the way in which we thought about how we reflect upon our lessons. And what I discovered very quickly is that our staff were very interested in AI. So was I, as a matter of fact. And we began to really think about how does AI influence and help and instruct us when it comes to coaching conversations, when it comes to reflective conversations with regards to what it was that we looked at. So I would say it's embedded, sort of. There's still lots to do with our staff with regards to making it work, because this is the important point for me. Our staff, and it's just simply because, and it's my fault, and it's because I haven't articulated it in the way in which I thought I have done, but I need to do more. They still see Iris Connect as a recording platform. It's not. That's surface level. Iris Connect for me is an inclusive teaching and learning platform that allows your staff to be able to collaborate, communicate, coach one another, be in digital spaces where they can have that sort of not time-intensive place where they can really sort of communicate and feel valued and feel that they're actually making a difference to the school, not just within their subject, but beyond it. So this is where I want us to be. From September, I'm going to be stretching it out to whole school triads, where I'm going to be developing a system where everyone's going to get into teams. This is all going to be set up within Iris Connect. So they will record the lesson, everything will be set up, our PD days will be set up so that they can then get together, talk and discuss and evaluate all of these things based on the models that we've set in front of them. I also want to make sure as well that we've got Iris AI working with them as a critical friend, because the evidence that you can get from AI is phenomenal if you do it right, and have that to influence the conversations that could take place. From all of this, I then want to move into a really inclusive, bespoke CPD program for every member of staff, whereby they can then take a look at what it is that they need to focus on. And I think this is going to come back to the pathways, which is what's being delivered with Iris Connect. But using teaching walkthroughs, which I'm discovering is a fantastic method of building an evidence-based pedagogy that staff can use to try and improve and build that into the CPD pathway. So essentially, every member of staff could be building their own pathway through all of this and have it all within one place. Because that's the thing that always bothered me for the past 28 years. You had to pluck it from so many different places to try and make sense of it. But now all of a sudden, I have got this platform where I can get everything in one place and everybody talking to one another and everybody sort of feeling that they're making a difference. So in behind, we've got all of our students doing what they need to do in the classroom. We've got our teachers working in the background, making sure that they're doing exactly the same thing. So just to give you a brief look at the AI insights that we've built up within our own school. So I don't mean to teach anybody how to suck eggs. I'm sure you've looked at this before. But you can use the AI insights that Iris Connect have got, or you can build your own. I built my own. But that was tricky because the first one that I produced was terrible. The second one I produced was just about okay. The third one I did, got it. And that was only because I had to retrain the way in which I thought about AI and how to use it. So essentially, you can do anything you want with it. Absolutely anything you want. This one here in particular, this one called C. Hughes Test, that was an English teacher. And I got her to take a look at her lesson through Rosenshine's principles. So that was built into that. And I would classify that teacher there as someone who would be difficult to change their mind. She was somebody who didn't really believe in it. And she sent me an email 2 days later with one word. And it was, wow. That for me was everything. For her to be able to do that and to be able to change. And for me, getting our staff to get involved with adaptive learning, which really comes back to being adaptive and agile and fluid in the stuff that you're doing within a lesson. One of our staff got really into this, one of our language teachers. And she was able to really build a fantastic AI insight for herself. And that's just a little sort of snapshot of the types of sort of questions that she wanted to start with. And this is what it looked like for her, where she had her 3 sort of reflections. I've crossed that out because that's the video that she had watched there. But this was the feedback that AI gave her. And this was based on one question of 8, where you had this sort of lesson and analysis feedback, where it gave her information about the activities, the questioning, the pace of learning, and the real-time adjustments of instruction. And it was accurate. It then went on to talk about recommended strategies, about things that she might want to focus on. But not only that, if you don't believe me, have a look. So it time-stamped it for her to go back and have a look at that with regards to what it was that she needed to do. And she then looked at that, reflected upon that, and brought that back to her coaching conversations. What I'm also in the process of doing, I have it set up, but I haven't showed it to the staff yet. I've already built their CPD hubs, departmental initially. So come September, when we start into our various different sort of CPD hubs and departmental hubs, Iris Connect has allowed me to bring everything together in one place where lesson recordings can be there, conversations can be there, research can be in there, sharing that information across the school, all in one place. Absolutely brilliant. And this is all about sort of mastering this evidence. And I've got this set up already for September for our staff, but I'm not there with it as of yet. And that's just a quick little example. I've chosen the art and design one, where you can build it into Key Stage 3, GCSE, A-level, research, whatever you want. And within that, you can put in all sorts of different things and communicate that with the rest of your colleagues. And that can be shared around the school as well. But I know I'm at the early stages of it yet, very early. And I'm still thinking it through, which is why I'm going to be really interested to what you're going to say in a few minutes. But what's important to me is this. This is now in our strategy plan. This is part of whole school strategy. What that effectively means that any teacher who comes to our school will be involved in this. This is our philosophy. This is our culture. This is who we are. And the expectation is that you will be embracing this type of approach to the way in which you want to improve as a teacher. And we've got a 4-year plan. And by the end of the 4th year, and I know it's incredibly ambitious, really crazy title, but we're using it nonetheless. We want to be world class. And the way in which we can be world class is by using the technology to be able to get us there and to have that in one place. And there's just some of the information just with regards to how Iris is going to help us get us to that point in 4 years' time. I couldn't do it without Iris Connect, I have to say that. And I'll finish there. And I just quite like that from Cezanne. He painted the same scene for over 36 years, over 80 paintings, but he eventually got it in the end, in about 1906. And it really is just about how little things over time, bit by bit, you can really begin to understand what's going on. And that's where I am with the staff. They sort of see it, but they're not really seeing all of it. But over the course of the next 4 years, the plan is that they will. That's where I am at the moment. So thank you so much for listening. And if any questions, I'm quite happy to respond to any of those.
We have actually got about 4 minutes for questions. So has anybody got any questions? Yeah.
How are you quality assuring the coaching that your coaches are doing?
The quality assurance for me, we have to come back to trust. And the way in which we quality assure that is in the rich conversations that those teachers are having with their line managers, talking about what it is that they are doing. We also have the same expectation with our line managers that they will be doing learning walks at certain points, and they will try and capture the essence of what it is that their teachers are doing. And for me, that's enough for them to come back and say, you know, through these triads, through these conversations that are taking place and the reflective processes that our teaching staff are going through, I can see that in the classroom. If they come back and they say that they're not seeing it in the classroom, then we will build in probably stricter intervention plans for them to find out what's missing for us to try and support them further. That hasn't happened yet, but it might be because we're at the early stages of it. So that's our measurement and control with regards to all of that. But I have to be very careful with it, because if I'm saying to our staff, I trust you, and then in the same breath I'm saying, but we're also going to measure you, it's a difficult thing to try and balance. But you're right. We have to try and get that measurement correct with regards to what it is that they do. I mean, behind the scenes, you know, one of the things that Iris Connect allow you to do, which I have done, I can go back in and I can see if our staff have actually accessed it. Have they actually watched it? Have they actually reflected upon it? And I have actually been in a position where I have actually gone to members of staff to say, look, that's been recorded over 2 weeks ago. You haven't logged in yet. Can I help you? And then that forces them to go back and to be able to have a look at it. So there are nice ways of going about it without being too strict about it. Yes?
How do you go about training coaches initially so that they're all having that kind of consistent way?
Yeah, and we have to collapse their timetable for a certain period to make sure that they have that time with us to be able to get that done. So we spend afternoons with them. So if they're teaching, we get cover in. So we make sure that's done. But the actual practicality of it, the meetings themselves, they actually take place in CPD days where there's no students in the school at all. So that's when they actually do that. But if we need to build in time, then we make time for them.
And is that in the initial training of?
Yes. Yes. Yeah.
So they've done, separately? Do you have a set CPD day where they all train to become coaches? Or do you do it so that they, like if you've got new joiners, for example, and they're not familiar with the coaching, how do you train them up?
I'm not at that stage yet.
Okay.
I'm still only at the stage where I've got 18 really eager members of staff that we have used time within the school day to train them.
Yeah.
And they're now at the stage now where they're now building their evidence of what they've got to come to the table for their first coaching session, which will be in April. And the idea then is that when we start in September, the first session in September will be part of that training process for all staff. And we're going to be using the 18 plus 6 as champions to be able to be in groups as well to make sure that it's functioning correctly as well. Yes?
You mentioned some stuff still have reservations after the report initially. I just wanted to ask what those reservations were and whether that will change your implementation. Go back in time.
Their reservations are really simple. One is that they believe that it's not going to help them become a better teacher. Because they believe within themselves that they're already there, that they don't need any external information to help them forward with that. The only way in which I can try and get them to do it, and I have done with some teachers, is to not ask them to record a full lesson, but I've asked them to record just 10 minutes at the beginning of the lesson, and to focus on one particular area, so that it becomes sort of something easy for them to access. And what I've discovered with that is that they generally come back and they've said to me, I didn't realize I did that then. So my next question to them is, okay, why don't you just record another 20 minutes and see what happens there? So it's small and incremental, and to try and push them forward.
I think we just have a colleague with a hand and follow there, but probably just got time.
Yeah, it was kind of touched on just there, but on one of your slides you said that it's kind of accepted almost, and my question was kind of linked with this in terms of how you've dealt with that reluctance and the kind of I feel torn between that autonomy and agency and actually saying almost as a directive that everyone must use it, or how have you dealt with that?
It comes back to, I haven't forced it. That's the thing. Because it comes back to care, and it comes back to sort of understanding who it is that you're speaking to. And if there's a genuine reason as to why that member of staff doesn't want to use the technology, then we have to sit with that person and explore that with them. And I have done that. And it comes back to this point here is where we try and build it in slowly. And what I've discovered, it comes back to fear. That's it. It's just fear factor. And once they get over that fear, then they realize that this is not a dangerous thing for them. It's actually something that could be quite productive. So that's what I'm only halfway through with regards to all of this. And I'd ask me that question in 2 years' time, and I might have a better answer for that.
We'll have you back, Jeremy.
Okay.
For sure. Thank you so much. I'm going to give Jeremy one more round of applause.
Thank you.